Hello, welcome back to the final installment of this workshop series with myself, Cocktail Party Effect. In this one, I'm going to be showing you a few of my workflow things, so some tips in Ableton and some of my hardware stuff that I like to use in the studio to make some of my glitchy noises. Thanks to everyone that's been tuning in to the last two, and hopefully this one is interesting as well. Cool. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be showing is a trick I like to do when using Ableton, which is this kind of Bpm trick. I use it a lot for my drums and melodies and all this kind of stuff, and it's quite an easy trick to do. It's not like a crazy routing thing, but if you sort of put some imagination to what you can do with it, it's pretty cool. All you need is like a drum beat, so I've got this little drum beat now. So nothing crazy. And what I'm going to do is make a new audio channel, and I'm going to set this to resampling. And if you're aware of it, resampling basically just takes anything from the master channel, and just records it. So when doing this, what you can do is press the record button, and it's literally as simple as doing this. Just flicking the BPM all over the shop. Right, so now that's happened, and as you can see, it's automated the BPM, so we want to delete that, we want to get rid of that. And what Ableton will try and do is basically warp what we've made and try and make sense of it. So what's going to happen is it's going to sound like this. So loads of real nice kind of glitchy fills there. And of course you can try out different algorithms for this one, so the texture one's quite nice for this. And what's really cool about that is you can do this again. So let's get another audio channel, let's get resample in there again. And I'm going to stick that to the textures mode, and again mess around with the BPM, so I'm going to record it like so. Cool. Delete that. Let's stick it to like a... Let's go 140, and let's have a listen to what we've done. So yeah, you just get these moments that are really kind of interesting, where it's kind of making these weird drum fills and stuff. And yeah, you can just keep going with that. You can just try out different algorithms, see what happens. For instance, the repitch is really nice because obviously it works more like a vinyl, so it kind of slows down and speeds up. That's really fun. And another little thing that's really sort of cool to use is when you use effects. So if I grab, let's say a reverb, let's get like the new reverb, shall we? And what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to get another audio channel. This is pretty much what I do most days. I just keep making audio channels and resampling until something happens. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to press this button here, which means that I can flick to a new preset. And if I do exactly the same thing as I did before, so resampling on this new audio channel, press record, I'm just going to keep clicking random presets. So now that's going to record that. So let's have a listen. So yeah, you can hear just loads of real nice textures. You can put, maybe you can layer that under a drum kit or whatever. But yeah, it just goes on forever. So this is just a real nice little trick. If you're sort of stuck with a loop or something, you can just go in with that. I actually did a whole track like this on my album last year, which is called Lost Banknote, where basically I just made this loop and didn't know what to do with it. So I basically just put the whole track back into Ableton and just went up and down with the BPM, which just made it just sound like either a tune or just a mess. I don't know. But either which, it came out as something. So this is just a nice little technique just to create some interesting noises. Cool. So to continue on with the sounds I made from the BPM resampling stuff, I'm going to use a little trick that I like to do for percussion stuff. So taking this sound that I made here, what I'm going to do is sort of turn this into like a randomized percussion thing. I don't know what you want to call it, but I find this is quite a nice trick to sort of generate new ideas and stuff like that. So what you need is a sampler, and put this sound into sampler. And what you want to do is go to the MIDI part. Now, what I've done is select sample offset and set this to 100. Now, what this means is when different velocity signals are triggered, it will play different parts of the sample. So you can do this in two ways. You can either like put these in yourself, so like that, and you can do this in a different way. So example, obviously the velocity is down here, so you could draw this in if you really wanted to, and as it plays, it will play different parts. Or if you really want it to be completely random, if you go to MIDI effects and get a velocity, let's turn up the random, and you'll start hearing a difference. Help if I played the right channel, of course. So now it's sort of jumping around the sample and just going mental. And the cool thing is that anything that has a velocity sort of amount, or anything you can just mess about with velocity and change something in the synth engine with, this will kind of trigger that as well. So let's go to the filter, for example. So let's go to the velocity here. Let's go down with here. So that's going to start moving. So to make this more percussion-like, we can bring down the ADSR. Maybe add a little bit of a velocity setting to the release. So it's quite cool. You can get a lot of clicky kind of patterns. If I speed it up a little bit. And you can keep applying this to different parts of the sampler. So, let's say the oscillator, so the FM. So you've got a lot of real fun things you can do there. And if you want to still go completely in with the randomized things, if you go to modulation here, and here's great because you can select all these different parts of sampler. So let's go to pitch for this one. Take off retrig. I always find it's nicer when you don't have this on, because what obviously retrig does, it means every time a MIDI note's played, it will reset the LFO to the beginning. If retrig's off, it means that the LFO will just run freely underneath it. So let's try something else. Let's go the filter drive. So yeah, straight away, some real nice kind of glitchy stuff you can work with. You can also take this further if you want. You can, example, let's take this, and of course you can use the chance, the new feature in Ableton as well, and you can randomize that if you want to, so the notes aren't playing all the time. So yeah, some really cool stuff. I always like to sort of add maybe a delay on there as well. And just keep going really, so you can just keep adding more and more little things. And this is another thing as well, like, I know I keep going on about resampling, but it's a great thing, because resampling that, for instance, then you've got loads of gold to mess about with. So let's have a listen. So yeah, loads of stuff. Samples and samples for days, and that's the thing. If you don't use it now, you can always use it later. Wicked. Alright, so for this example, I'm going to be using a tool I use in my studio quite a lot, which is the Coco Quantus. So see it Lombard. It's a looping delay, 8-bit looping delay, but it's also a granular delay as well. I use this a lot for drums and percussion and melodies, pretty much anything that I want to completely mash up. So I'm going to give some examples on how it works. I'll sort of talk about the main frame of it and then go into more chaotic stuff in a bit. Cool. So the whole thing about this instrument is that it's a really beautiful synth because you can have everything from like really just sort of deep atmospheres, like gritty texture, to also like chaotic distortions. So the whole system works like this. You have a microphone, you also have some inputs, you got 2 delay units, and this is like a modulation source in the middle. So you can do a few things here which are pretty nice, and I'm going to show you again as the basics of it. This here is kind of a mixture of modulations and oscillators, and I can take a oscillator, put it into one of the inputs. So you have different kind of ones here. And this is the pitch. And here is something called the chaos. So I can slightly glitch it out if I want to. So in using these, I can do a number of things. I can actually record that into the delay, so let's just sort of record it and see what happens. And if I start messing around with this, which is kind of the speed of the delay, here it's kind of looping to fade. And I can give it random bursts. And the beauty of this machine is that you can freeze the delay. So I can go, and now it's stuck in a frozen loop. And over here we have basically inputs where I can reverse or stutter the loop. I think it plays from the beginning. So I can take the same signal I recorded and put it into one of these. Or I could take another one. And you can hear it's now skipping around, going a bit mad. Gonna put some reverb on it because it always sounds nice with reverb. So of course, you can change the pitch. And the more you go down in pitch, the sort of more grittier it becomes. Example here. Or if I wanted to, I could also plug one of these oscillators / modulation sources into pitch. So you can hear it has like a really organic sound. It's like, yeah, it's just a beautiful sound to it. So that's kind of the basic layout. Obviously, you can go pretty in depth with how it works. You can also sort of cross-modulate stuff. You can use this whole part here really intensely. And the great thing is, because it's got 2 delays, you can have it in stereo and make really interesting rhythms and chords and all this kind of thing. So I'm going to show you now how I use it a bit in my own music. And yeah. So for another example of kind of more melodic stuff, one thing I really like to use for this is short bleeps, and then kind of see how far I can push them. So at the moment I've got a little randomized patch going on in Ableton, which sounds like this. And I'm going to start recording this into the Coca Quantus. And as it's recording in, I'm going to start sending modulation to different parts of it. So you can just let it do its thing, and of course you can freeze it, turning down the input. And now I just have the frozen delay going round, which means I can pitch it down. That low, so you can start hearing the real gritty 8-bit crunch. Or you can just play it with your hands. It's a really fun thing to play around with for melodic stuff for sure. Alright, so I've got like a little drum loop I'm putting into the audio input. So it's just sort of looping that in Ableton. And what I really like to do with this is take a drum loop and then basically just slowly start to mash it into madness. What I'll do is I'll start turning up the delay. So I could take really quick snippets like this. Make some sort of rainy mess with that. Or if I really wanted to, I could have the delay rate really long and then turn it up. So now you can hear that because it's got two delays, different ones are working at different times. So I can start having fun with this a bit more. Like so. So again, you can go from very like sort of beautiful stuff like I showed at the beginning to sort of absolute destruction. Like so. So it's pretty, yeah, I love it because you can just go really wild with it and just get some like chaotic ideas straight away. And obviously just put that into Ableton, chop it up a bit, see what happens. But yeah, so this is one tool I use a lot for glitching. All right, cool. So the next thing I'd like to show is a piece of hardware that I use a lot in my studio, which is this Emu Ultra Sampler. I tried to get the camera closer to it, but I realized the screen doesn't really pick up very well. So you're gonna have to make do with kind of my hand disappearing over here and doing some stuff. But the Emu Ultra is an old sampler. I've got two here. I've got an Akai 3000 XL and this Emu 64 Ultra, and it's an interesting sampler because it has a certain sound to it, and some of the things you can do to it, so what you can do with the sample is quite interesting. So it's got a lot of downgrading capabilities, and they're quite known for their filters. So you can do some really interesting filter movements and just make these really very like kind of just, it sort of pushes the air around. It's quite interesting. But But what I really like to do with it is use it for downgrading. So I've loaded in a sample here, which I made in Ableton. So hopefully it's not going to blast the speakers off. There we go. So that's been loaded in from the desk into that. Now back out to the desk. And what's really cool is you can use this little tool in it, which is the sort of bit converter. So it's at 12. So if I take this down to around 7, and it will load, it will start having a sort of more crunchy sound to it. So you can start hearing this kind of top end noise to it. And I can take this down even more, say to 4. Yeah. So this is something I use a lot in my tunes because I just really love how it just adds these real nasty overtones. And I'm going to show you now like how I use this with a drum beat and how creative this can sound with like a drum loop in there. Okay, so sort of next part of this is I've loaded in a drum beat into it. It's a pretty basic 808 Ableton preset drum kit, but just made a little beat. And applying the same thing as I did with that bass to this can give you some really cool results. So if I go out to the tools, and I'm going to convert it to 8. So you can start hearing some crunching. A little bit of crunching going on. Go back into it, go down to 5. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's go even lower. Let's just see what happens if I go 2. So yeah, you can go into complete chaos with it, which is really nice. And there's probably a way of doing this with plugins and stuff, but I just really enjoy working with these machines. I think it's quite therapeutic to work with these machines, because even though everything takes way longer than you could do it if you're on software, there's just something really nice about the process of coming away from the screen to here and really listening to the changes you've done. Sometimes I'll just spend hours on this, just slowly changing things like the filter movements and stuff, and then eventually you have like a real solid like loop to work with. So yeah, it's a nice thing to sort of to work with. So the last thing I want to show is this Polyend tracker, which is something I've been using a lot in my studio recently. It's a tracker, so everything works sort of vertically down. It's a really wicked tool I've been finding for speaking to all my machines, and it's really great because you can just add a lot of kind of randomization and chants and all this kind of stuff to things, and you can really just make your machines proper glitch out for a little bit. What I've got here is basically this is sending MIDI information to my Akai, and I use my Akai quite a lot for drums or melodic stuff because the sine wave in it sounds really nice, and the sine wave sounds great for bass as well. So what I've done is added a bunch of notes, which is sort of on a minor scale. If I play it, it will sound like this. So once you've got that, you can start making it more and more abstract. So example, I can hold down shift and add an effect. So I'm going to add a roll. And I'm going to put this roll go down to here, to here, and go. So straight away it sounds a bit more interesting. Okay, add another effect. So shift through. Let's add some chants to it. So some of the notes will play and some of them won't. And what makes this really interesting is the ability to copy and paste these over. So let's see. Copy, paste, paste. And let's put some different notes in there. So I'm going to randomize those notes. And do the same to this one. Randomize the notes. And let's let it go. So yeah, you can hear it's quite straight away something really interesting. So this is one tool I've been using a lot recently. And of course for drums it's great and everything else. So that's the last thing I wanted to show in my studio. Small little things, but fun things. Alright, cool. Thanks very much for tuning into that. Hopefully there was some stuff in there that you found interesting or useful for your own work. If you have any questions about anything I did, you can always chat to me on social medias. I do apologise way in advance. As I've said before, I'm not very social on social media, but I'll do my best to reply to messages. And a massive thanks to everyone that handed in projects in the last 2 workshops. It was really cool to work with people's music, and it's really interesting to hear what people are up to. So yeah, and thanks to Fold again for putting this on. Hopefully there'll be more. And great, have a good one.